They say you can never tell that we are in a speculative bubble until it's too late. Part of the nature of a collapse is that it surprises everyone. This was true in nearly every example throughout economic history. In 2008, very few people were sounding the alarm when it came to housing. The common belief was that we were not in a bubble. Instead, we had reached a permanent high plateau because valuations were now fairly priced as part of some sort of new paradigm. And this belief sounds eerily similar to what is going on today. Are we in a bubble, and when will the collapse come? That is the question everyone is trying to answer following some absurd developments in the housing market. We've known for years now that housing prices have been climbing to shocking levels around the world. This is not a problem that is isolated to just the United States. Home prices globally have exploded in the post-2008 era. For example, in England, since the 2009 lows, real estate prices have quite literally doubled. If we look across the globe in New Zealand, the same is true. Prices have doubled since 2009. And elsewhere in Europe, such as Germany, it's the same pattern. Even here in the United States, this doubling of prices is consistent, and this is likely not a coincidence. This is the result of a unified government policy following the Great Recession of 2008. Most governments around the world lowered rates to nearly zero for over a decade, and naturally, because of this, asset prices exploded. Rich people seeking some sort of return positioned themselves into real estate as it was one of the few things you could buy to get some sort of yield. From October 2011 to April 2022, there was never a moment in time where the average 30-year mortgage rate was more than 5%. That's over 10 years, and to make it even worse, for the majority of the decade, the rate was under 4%. This seemed to be great for the masses, as regular hardworking people had the opportunity to purchase homes using record low rates, but it also made the environment extremely attractive to the rich investor class, which used this opportunity to leverage an unbelievable amount of money to buy second homes, investor homes, vacation homes, and Airbnbs. It's reported that today, almost 40% of all homes in the country are owned by someone who does not live there, and clearly this decline in primary owners has been on the downfall since 2007, coinciding with these interest rate changes. Simply put, the house has been turned into an ATM for a certain class of people, and this has now ruined it for the rest of us. The ATM is beginning to look like it's running out of money, and everyone is worried that the whole apparatus may fail because of this greed. And it's not just me complaining, there is valid evidence that the general population is extremely concerned about the future of housing, and it can be argued that we are now living in the most unaffordable market since at least 1983. The University of Michigan conducts a survey that examines the buying conditions for a home dating back to 1960, which is over 60 years of data. And as you can see, there has only been 2 time periods where participants reported conditions as bad as today. Now, a lot of people would argue that today is actually the worst we have ever seen in the history of real estate, and that these instances don't really compare to the challenges homebuyers are facing in 2023. And for a lot of reasons, they may just be right. The bubble has grown to never before seen size, and before I reveal how it potentially pops, please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the video thus far. Every single like is fuel for the algorithm to help this channel out, and I would greatly appreciate it if you just took 2 seconds to help out. Thank you, and now back to what I was saying. You see, this dip right here in 1983 is what a lot of older people will point to as their proof that maybe things are not as bad today as they once were. But there is a flaw in this logic. While it is true that interest rates back then in 1983 hit 18%, the circumstances were quite different. This number only lasted about a month before rates fell once again to 16%, and in 1983 there was a steep decline, allowing those with those absurd rates to refinance down to the 12-13% range, which sounds excessive, but back in those days it was considered just slightly above normal. Mortgage rates until about the late 90s would rarely dip below 10%. In fact, if we look at year-over-year changes, which gives you an idea of just how drastic rates would change over the course of modern history, you can clearly see that what we saw over the last 2 years has never before been seen in modern American history. The sheer pace of increases was more than 2 times worse than what we saw in the early 80s. Nobody can really understand what this shock will do for the market because it's never happened before. Now that rates are climbing, many are speculating that a big crash will finally break the bubble and it will come in the form of investor capitulation. Specifically in the short-term rental market, this is often cited as the big Airbnb crash. The theory right now is that as we speak, there are dozens of metro areas around the United States where short-term rentals are extremely common. These are homes that are typically owned by investors renting out to vacationers in cities like Miami, Vegas, Scottsdale, Orlando, and many others. If you dig into it, you'll see that a lot of these homes were acquired by something called DSCR loans. Long story short, if you begin to dig into these types of loans, you will see that they're not exactly the type that screams security and stability. These are financial instruments that were originally intended to be used for commercial properties like resorts and hotels, but have since been expanded to include Airbnbs. When a lender approves you for this type of loan, it's typically not based on personal income at all. It's based on future cash flow. In simple terms, this means that you as an investor could theoretically go to a bank offering this product and argue that a particular property will generate X amount of dollars operating as an Airbnb, and the bank, not checking your personal income or debt, will approve you based only on the estimated future revenue of this supposed Airbnb. Now the problem or fear with this is that banks and investors made wild assumptions regarding future cash flows, overstating them by a large margin. The people who claim a crash is coming argue that Airbnb revenues have been grossly overexpressed in the past few years, and going forward, this market segment will struggle. The home has been converted into a resort, and now that the word is out, the entire business has become oversaturated just as demand is falling. The theory presumes that many of these DSCR loans are going bad, and forced selling by these investors will kickstart a big crash in the market. The main thing to remember about housing is that it operates on something called the Pareto principle, meaning that prices in an entire neighborhood can be reset by a mere handful of sales. It's the 80-20 rule, but in practice, it can be even more narrow. What is observed in many cities is that just 4% of sales can reset the valuation for 64% of houses. As Charles Hugh Smith puts it, 40 houses selling for around $450,000 will reset the valuation of 1,000 nearby homes from $800,000 to $450,000. This is why an apparently modest number of fire sales of money-losing Airbnbs will dissolve the floor under bubble valuations. Remember, in the game of prices, it's not just about catching the good deals, it's also about not getting burned by selling too early and watching the prices go down even more. When a fire sale begins, it's very hard to stop, and with transaction volume so low, it really wouldn't take a lot of forced selling for prices to collapse in a way that we have never seen before as a result of extremely low liquidity. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the video, and make sure you leave a comment below letting me know what you're seeing with Airbnbs in your local market.